Hello, this is part 2 of Infinity of the restoration of the 1972 C20 Suburban. Today's project is front suspension components. So let's take a look at it. It has old coil springs and tie rod ends were loose. So this is today's project. First thing I did was steam clean this. Took the wheels off, steam cleaned it. So now, I got the driver's side partially assembled. Take a look and see what we did here. So I took this completely apart so I could put that new coil spring in, factory height. And then the tie rod end. I checked all the components on the front end and they all were tight. I was really surprised. The ball joints, everything looked really good. The only thing that was weak was right there is the old tie rod ends. That joint right there was really sloppy. They're sloppy on both sides. And that rubber bumper too. See how that's all split? So I decided to replace those. So here we are. Here's the new piece. This part right here is what was really bad on the old one. Pretty common, pretty easy to fix these. And so I will be installing that right there and tying it in. Some notes are to make this job easier than anything I've ever done on front end suspension is this ball joint separator. Oh my God, what a lifesaver to separate these tie rod ends instead of a pickle fork, which can be a pain. You know, I got up in here and separated this upper ball joint with this and the tie rod end. Lifesaver. Go get one of these if you're ever doing front end work and you'll throw your pickle forks away. Next is the spring itself, just making sure that it's seated correctly, top and bottom. Securing your brake caliper so that it's not hanging on the hose and damaging it. Super important, right? And then torque specs, of course. A lot of people just tighten shit up as tight as they can. I actually look up the torque specs so I can get my castle nuts right, cotter pins, new bolts where needed. You have to remove the lower portion of the shock and the bolt. You know, I mean, would it work if I reinstalled the old bolt? Yeah, but why not put a brand new one on there with a little nylon insert to keep it tight and look better and come off easier the next time. Something else that has really surprised me is how easy it has been to take all these old nuts off. These nuts that have not been touched since 1972, right, when this thing left the factory. I was scared that this is going to be the hardest part of the whole job. However, this product, oh my God, what a lifesaver. To loosen those rusted nuts, about 3 days ago, I started soaking these joints and nuts with this stuff, coil penetrant. And then I did it again the morning of the project. And here I am I'm getting my breaker bars out, you know. I'm getting this is a 1/2 inch drive, but I actually have 1 inch drive sockets and breaker bars. And I'm getting up in here thinking, okay, here we go. Dude, I didn't even need, a 3/8 wrench would have pulled those off. So that product I'm super duper happy with. Let's see, what else? So as I go to get, the brakes themselves look really good, so I don't have to do anything with those. They had been redone by the previous owner. And I'm trying to think what else. Oh, by far the hardest part of this project so far is installing the rubber bumper. Oh my God, what a pain in the ass. What I ended up doing was getting this rubber hot. I put it in some hot water. Here at my shop, we install paint protection film, and as part of that process, we always have hot water to spray. So this little coffee pot, I put the rubber in here to soften it up and make it more pliable. That helped. And then I put lubricant. I put some wax. I'm sure dish soap would work on the little flanges here. They're hard to see, but if you're installing one, you know what I'm talking about. And then push and wiggle and twist, and it's a pain. But basically, the idea was pushing it one flap down like this as hard as I could, wiggling it in, and then rocking it while keeping pressure on it. Finally snapped in. The only thing I'm not happy about is, I mean, it's in here, it ain't going anywhere. But look at it's like loose. It's floppy. Now, the good thing is it's not going to make any noise. You know, driving down the road, that you're not going to hear that. But I kind of was thinking it would be a little tighter. But if it was tighter, it'd probably be more impossible to install. So anyway, so this is the project for today. Got to do the other side, so it'll probably take me into tomorrow. Steam cleaning the whole thing, what a massive help. I mean, oh my gosh. I mean, I still get dirty in my gloves, but you know what it's like working on a greasy rig like that. Okay, so I'm progressing along with the project here of replacing the coil springs and the tie rod ends and a couple other little things. And I'll just show you where I'm at now. On the driver's side, driver's side's done, passenger side. So, got my tie rod end there done here. And again, I'll take this thing in for an alignment at a shop, because, you know, once you take these apart, you've adjusted the steering angle here. I got them as close as I could measure from the old ones, but, you know, might as well have it lined up. Got the new coil spring in. And this one gave me a little more trouble. Separating this ball joint gave me a little more trouble. Still got it apart with the really cool tool that I showed you, but I had to crank on it quite a bit. But yeah, after doing it once on the other side, this side, super easy. And then I'm gonna also reinstall my sway bar, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But something I've noticed, okay, I'm 52 years old. I did this kind of thing back in this, not the early 80s, all through the 80s, maybe early 90s. And then I quit, I got married, bought a house, priorities change. So I just bought newer vehicles. I got to where I didn't like working on old rigs like this. Now it's like a reawakening. Now I've had a 66 Chevy truck that whole time. So I tweaked on it a little bit, but nothing major, nothing like I'm doing on this thing. And here's what I've noticed after taking a 30-year break from car working on and stuff like this is, first off, just having the experience when I was younger translates today still really well, even though I've taken that big a break. Another thing is money. I've got way more money now than I did back then. And that doesn't mean I have a lot of money, right? It's just in my teen years and early 20s, I was broke. I did things out of necessity. And, you know, I don't have to do that now. You know, I mean, I still work for a living. I'm not like, you know, multi-millionaire, but, you know, if I need a part, I go to the store and buy it. Back in the day, it was, I mean, beg, borrow, or steal. That is super nice. The second thing is patience. The older we get, hopefully, the more patience we have. And that is awesome because, you know, working on these things can be super frustrating. I may have shown you this in a previous video, but just as an example, when I installed this distributor, it didn't clear the firewall. And so I had to beat the daylights out of it, right? And that looks terrible. But, you know, it was the only thing that could be done at the time. But I didn't freak out like I would have back in my teen years. I just dealt with it, okay? So having that. The other thing is tools. You know, I have way more tools now. I own a car detail shop. And so, you know, a lot of the tools don't translate, but I have tools. It makes a big difference. I have a steam cleaner, you know, pressure washer, hot water steam cleaner.
And so that makes working on these filthy things a lot easier. Having a shop that I can actually work in covered. You know, I used to have to work in my parents' driveway, gravel driveway, in the rain. I'm in Portland, Oregon area where it rains 9 months out of the year. You know, literally I mean, right now there's a massive rainstorm. I would have to be out in the gravel driveway on my back working. I don't have to do that anymore. I'm in a heated shop. So all these little things, you know, sound silly maybe to you guys that do this all the time. But taking that big of a break, it's a huge difference. All those are positive. A negative is my mind is willing and I know what I'm doing, but my body ain't like it used to be. You know, again, laying on your back. I mean, just after 2 days of working on this thing and getting up and down off this stool, I'm sore. I mean, and I got little bruises here and there on my hands from whacking my knuckles. I'm like, oh, I don't miss that at all. But I guess it's good for me to be rolling around. Another positive is having a camera. You know, again, you guys that do it all the time may think, oh, big deal, Jason. But just taking a picture of your work before you take something apart. I mean, oh my God, this stuff, now this isn't terribly complex, but like the rear has drum brakes. I remember doing drum brakes back in the day. You know, the first time I did them, I took both wheels off, disassembled all of them, both sides, and then go to put it together. Can't remember how they go. Now, you just take a picture, or you just take one side apart and leave the other. But that sounds simple, but oh, what? A wiring's the same way. Take a picture of the wiring. Anyway, so that's the next advantage is because I'm a little better off than I was in my teen years, I don't have to drive this to work the next day. I had one car. I had a 70 Chevelle. I did a ton of work on it, but it was my daily driver. I had to go to work the next day. So anything I did on it had to be done, and I couldn't break anything. If I broke anything, I mean, ride to work with Dad, maybe. You know, I mean, now, you know, I can work on it at my own leisure. Huge difference. That's probably patience. That probably ties in with patience. And the next thing is Google. Just having Google. It sounds silly, but like, for example, here is the sway bar that I took off. It was on the front of this thing, factory sway bar. I took it off, cleaned it all up, painted it. I bought all new bushings. You know, I mean, here's the old, here's the new, and I'm going to install that pretty quick. But I didn't take a picture when I took this off because I'm like, well, how difficult is this? I'm going to remember all this. It just bolts up. But what I didn't do was, which way does this go on? You know, if you look at the front of the truck here, it goes like this. Well, which end is which? Because they're not symmetrical. I forgot to take a picture. Google. Obviously, good old Google's going to tell me that in about 4 seconds. So I'm not even worried about it. Back in the day, information was hard to come by. You know, I would have had to either hold that up and bolt it in the wrong way and then flip it around, frustration on your back on a gravel driveway in the rain. Or, you know, and I lived in the country too. So it was 25-minute drive just to Oregon City, just to a town that had anything to get information. I might have to drive into town just to ask the guy at the parts store, hey, how does this go in? You know, so all of these things, super positive. I love it. So yes, so I'm done with this project. Literally just put the wheel back on is all I need. But before I do that, I'm going to put the sway bar back on. And it's pretty simple. I mean, it really is just bolt on. I might have to wrestle with it a little bit. And then, yeah, install new bushings and stuff like that in there. And I have done that before. On my 70 Chevelle, it had a rear sway bar 30 whatever years ago. I've done that and it made a big difference. So anyway, that's my next step. Reinstalling my front anti-sway bar, and I'm off to the hardware store, and here's why. I took the old bolts off when I took it out, and they look like this, okay? And one thing I hate is when bolts are too long and that much sticks past and this part rusts up like crazy, and then now the next poor bastard can't get them off or they snap because this is rusted. So when I buy new bolts, I buy them shorter, like this, so that the nut still engages all the way, but there's not a mile of threads hanging out here. Well, guess what? That bit me in the ass, and here's why. If you look, hold this up like this, get against the surface. If you look like this, look where this, I'll have to do it on the bench. Obviously, when you screw this down, this is going to contact the plate that it's bolting to, okay? And it's tight. I mean, this rubber is not shoved up in there because it keeps coming out, but right there. So see the difference between there and the bottom of this rubber, okay? In other words, when this is bolted down, it's going to compress the shit out of this rubber and hold on to that bar. And so, in other words, my short bolt has screwed me because I can't install it. And I'll put it in here and I'll show you why. If I take this and I put it in here like this, and I try to get a bolt in, so this where my finger's at here is the short bolt that I bought. I can't even get it started because it's not long enough. It needs to be longer and then screwed down. So, not a huge deal, right? Not the end of the world, but the longer bolts were to make it easier to install. So it's like, okay, I'll deal with the longer bolt. But another stupid moment is I buy stainless. This is stainless anyway, so it ain't gonna rust. And so, Jason, just stop outthinking yourself. So now, on a Sunday, I'm down to the hardware store to buy longer bolts so I can install my anti-sway bar. Hey, I'm underneath the truck here. The next thing I'm working on is an oil leak. Let me show you what's leaking. It's an oil pressure sending unit. So this is a big block 402. Right there's where the oil filter goes. And then see that little pipe plug thing. I don't know if I can get on it. It goes up there. That was leaking. Why is it leaking? Because the numbnuts that put the block together, put the engine together, and installed this, did not put any thread sealer on any of these fittings. So, you know, thanks Einstein to put this all together. That goes in the block. This screws into there. We got to have a 90 for clearance purposes, and then the sending unit screws into there like that. They have to use this because the header is right in the way, right there. And I hate oil leaks. I can't stand them. This engine's not that old, so I guess I'm glad I'm finding this now, but I thought I had a transmission leak because I looked up in here when I first bought this truck and that was not leaking. And then I start seeing some drippage over here, the transmission. I thought, shit, I got a leak. Nope. The good thing is easy to fix. I can do it here now, just a few busted knuckles and sore neck from lying on the ground. Okay, so I'm finally finished with the coil spring and front end project. The last step was having it aligned at this shop right here. And so yesterday they did that. It was way out, as you can imagine. But here's something I discovered. So look at the way it's sitting now. Now remember, I just did the front. It lowered the front about, at least an inch, like 2 inches, I'm guessing. See how the back is still high up? So that's kind of interesting because I have no idea what the springs that were on there, other than they were just old and crappy, but they were higher than factory. These springs are factory. So that's interesting, but it's good news because it actually puts it at a level I like it. I wasn't gonna purposefully lower the truck, but I like it like this. So when I do the back springs, hopefully that'll level all things out and that'll be good. So that is the end of this project. I'll be on to the next. Bye.